Hello, students. Another lesson with Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Armstrong teaches contractions. Contractions is probably review for a lot of you, but we're going to get into the basics of it. You're going to have some things to write down, so get ready to take some notes. Here we go. Contractions. Contractions are when we take two words and smoosh them together into a single, shorter word. When we do that, some of the letters go missing. We put an apostrophe where the missing letters once were. Write all of that down. Did you write it down? You can pause if you need to. Let's look at some examples, shall we? I am primarily going to focus on the most common contractions. Contractions are something that evolve over time with usage. Think of language as a kind of wiki, where all of the users collaboratively, collectively, get to change it to suit their particular needs. That's the origin of contractions. We've taken longer things and squished them down into smaller things so that they're easier to use. One of the most common ways we do this is by adding a pronoun and a verb together. Some examples. If we had the pronoun I and the verb am, we could combine them to I'm. Notice that the letter A goes missing, and so we put the apostrophe where the A used to be. She is can be shortened to she's. Notice that the I goes missing, and so that's where we put the apostrophe. An apostrophe is not a glue that is holding the two smushed words together. It is more like a little wisp of smoke. It's the evidence that missing letters used to be here, but they're not there anymore. And the final example, though there are a lot more, is we would. We would can be shortened to weed. We remove the W, the O, the U, the L, and all that's left is the D. So now the apostrophe goes where the W-O-U-L would have been. Poof! Here are those examples again, but I have drawn a line through the missing letters to make it a little more clear. Another very common way that we create contractions is by adding a verb, an auxiliary verb, to the word not, which is an adverb. In doing so, and this is where it gets a little challenging for some folks, the letter that goes missing is the O in the middle of the word not. So N-O-T becomes in apostrophe T when we smush the words together. So, for example, if we were to say did not, we're going to smoosh those two words together to create a contraction, didn't. But notice that the only letter that goes missing is the O from the word not, and so we put the apostrophe where that O used to be. The apostrophe is not glue sticking the two words together. The apostrophe goes where the missing letter once was. Let's look at a few more examples. Should not becomes shouldn't. We keep the word should, we add N, apostrophe T, and we have our contraction, shouldn't. Now, there are some odd examples of contractions that I'd like to point out as well. So these are a few unusual versions of contractions, but they still essentially follow the same rules. The first one is the word cannot. Cannot is unusual just because cannot has become one word, cannot. We can still turn it into a contraction, though, by removing an N and an O, and we put that apostrophe where those two letters used to be. So cannot becomes can't. Another strange example is will not. Will not, if we were following the same guidelines as before, would become wilt. But wilt is not a word. This is another example of what we call irregular. Will not doesn't become wilt. It becomes won't. Why? English. But the apostrophe still goes where the missing O would have been. Anytime we add not to an auxiliary verb, we really add N apostrophe T. And like I said a little earlier on, there are other contractions, and since language is an ever-changing tool commanded by consensus, there could always be more. But these are the most common and the most ubiquitous. These are the ones you're going to see. These are the ones that I'm going to quiz you on if I'm giving you quizzes. These are the ones you're going to be expected to know. And once again, they're the most common. They're the ones you use all the time. You know all these. And these are just the rules, the way that they function. And so that concludes this very brief lesson on contractions. We'll talk more about these later. If you have any questions, you can post them in the comments or ask me in class. Have a great day. I look forward to talking to you very soon.